Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar where we're going to be focusing on Poland and specifically kind of maximising the Polish market for speedy cross-border growth. My name is Liam and I'm from the team over at Simply VAT. I work in the partnerships and I'm also the Senior Business Development Manager within the team. So I work day to day with clients who are looking to grow their businesses cross-border. Just for people who are new to Simply VAT or just new here in general with our webinar series, Simply VAT work with international businesses basically looking to grow their brands cross-border, looking at new markets, and we're an international tax agent specifically. And we work with kind of clients that are looking to grow into new markets and boost their brands. And on that kind of topic as well, I'm joined with Sam from the team over at ILG. So Sam, I don't know whether you want to just introduce yourself and the team.
Thanks, Liam. Great to be here. So I'm Sam Taylor from ILG, as Liam said. I'm Client Services Director here. So ILG are a third-party warehousing, logistics and fulfilment company with presence across the UK and Europe, in particular Poland, hence the topic today. But yeah, looking forward to a good conversation.
Perfect. Thanks, Sam. So yeah, just going into kind of some housekeeping rules. What we're going to look at is obviously we will be going through some slides today. I'll be talking first about the VAT kind of side of Polish expansion and looking at the Polish market in that aspect. So through that question, if you have any questions or through that kind of slide comments, please do feel free to ask questions in the comment section and I'll be able to kind of go through those at the end. And as well, when Sam comes back on, we'll be looking at some, slides for ILG. So please do feel free to put some questions in there as well. The session as well will be accessible for on-demand viewing after the webinar has kind of finished. So we'll be sharing that with you shortly. And please do also feel free to sign up to our Simply VAT newsletter. So without further ado, as I mentioned, we're just going to go through kind of the Polish VAT side today. So we'll be looking at entry requirements for Poland, how to register and stay compliant within Poland, and getting VAT compliant for Black Friday and the holiday season, just because it is, as we mentioned at the start, kind of speedy cross-border. So it's quite a quick turnaround, which I'll go through more in a moment. Then through that kind of ILG, when Sam comes back on, we'll be looking at how to use Poland as a fulfillment strategy. So looking at how it's more of a strategic move and what the requirements are when doing fulfillment through Poland. So looking at kind of the Polish VAT side, when you're looking to register in Poland, it's mandatory for kind of non-Polish businesses to register for VAT in Poland before any taxable activity concludes. So that would be looking at kind of holding stock, or if you're doing any kind of cross-border sales, not always purchasing of stock, but there's other aspects there as well. When it comes to tax representation in Poland also, with non-EU businesses, so this doesn't include UK businesses either, there is an exemption for that, but they must be appointed a Polish tax representative who can manage kind of compliance and communication with tax offices. So that's deemed as kind of fiscal representation, and that's a requirement by the Polish tax offices for that. Looking at the consequences of not registering, obviously failure to register can lead to penalties, shipment delays, loss of VAT recovery rights within kind of Poland, and also, cease worst case scenario, kind of not being allowed to kind of, sell within that country, but that is a very, very worst case scenario. Looking at the importance of registration as well. So obviously any kind of, if you are looking to target Poland as a market for that growth, it's required to kind of get that before, as we mentioned, any taxable activity. So just really pushing that VAT need side there. If we're looking at the process for registration, any kind of non-Polish established businesses must submit a VAT-R form with company registration, articles of association, activity proof, and translations. That's when you're getting your VAT number. So when you push your VAT number through the system, there is essentially going to be evidence required to support that application. So that will be if you're, say, holding stock in Poland, you'd need to show evidence of you having, Polish warehouse or a 3PL contract to show that proof will be kind of going from there. The goods will be landing there and fulfilling from there. Once that's kind of been done and approved, you'll then have obviously ongoing compliance obligations. That is going to be your monthly VAT returns, which is mainly for B2B sales, will be kind of an EC sales list, and that's required on a ongoing basis through if you're doing any B2B sales that from stock held in Poland going to another VAT registered business in another member state. With the kind of invoicing, as well as it mentions here, we're just looking at the invoicing systems must follow the Polish VAT rules. So that looks at, correct rates, formats, and also looking at any legislative changes, and looking at as well, the risk management for non-compliance. If you're looking at any, if you've been, say, what's a good example here? Doing activity in the past and you haven't registered, for example, and you're looking at now registering, we'd need to look at obviously a backdated start date on that VAT registration because there was a period of acting non-compliantly within Poland. So working with the local kind of tax offices to ensure that those penalties and, can potentially be reduced, or, look at having a ongoing discussion to make sure it's up to date, and so you can move forward with your VAT from there. So obviously we've looked at the kind of requirements and what can be supported with evidence for getting that VAT registration within Poland. If we look at kind of timeframes, it's currently estimated to be around a 2 to 3 week turnaround when your application is landed with the Polish tax offices. Now, when we are, so obviously this is as it stands now, which is the 7th of October, we are in constant communication here at Simply That with all tax offices, inclusive of the Polish tax authorities, to ensure that the timeframe is up to date. So this may change, but typically we do see it turn around in 2 to 3 weeks. And I've been with the company now for 3 years, and I'll be completely transparent, this hasn't changed since I've been with the business. So, it is still, has always been as well, quite a speedy turnaround within that. So if you were to look at registration within Poland, obviously here at Simply That, we can support you with the best evidence that's needed to get the application approved, and also look at the supporting documents that are typically asked for. Those are usually within Poland, you're essentially required to give sworn translations. That would be of company documents that's required essentially. Now, dependent on the business, you may need to do some more than usual, depending on size, turnover, etc. So the team will guide you on what documents are essentially needed to be translated. And we do also work with a partner who we can support you through with that as well. So we'll be able to look at getting that all tied up as quickly as possible. I would just note additionally that sworn translations can sometimes take an additional week or so just to get those kind of turned around and provided back to you. So I would just always add that on top of the time frame when looking to grow, just to make sure that it's all inclusive within that. With Poland, obviously, we have mentioned that it is quite a quick turnaround. So the reason why we're looking at this, at this time of year, is when we're launching into Q4, obviously, within the EU market, Poland is one of the shorter timeframes. So it's a market that you can easily grow into. If we were to submit the application within the next couple of weeks, for example, there's a high chance that you'll be ready to kind of grow before Black Friday and the holiday and festive season moving forward. So you can really get that growing within the EU prior to the end of the year. For other elements of that, however, with the VAT registration, obviously that is one key market one key factor of growing within that market. But there's also other elements. So you need to look at obviously making sure your products have the correct VAT rates, updating any invoicing systems, looking at just general kind of product compliance as well, with any translations, etc., that will be required moving forward. and looking at monitoring inventory, fulfillment, operations, just to ensure accurate VAT recording for both kind of domestic, Polish, and intra-EU sales, which I'll move on to very shortly. And then also looking at increased reporting volume and potential audits by timely VAT returns and supporting documentation. So just looking at basically ensuring everything is there to get in the market and continue to act compliantly within those moving forward. So as we've kind of mentioned with that intra-EU sales as well, once your goods are in Poland, you're essentially then free to circulate, local domestic Polish sales, whether that's direct to consumer or business to business. You can then also look at the EU as a whole. So if you're selling on your own website, you may have heard of the OSS schemes. So they're the one-stop shop schemes. The one we're going to specifically be looking at now is called the Union One-Stop Shop. The Union OSS essentially allows you to sell freely throughout the EU to any EU member state direct to consumer from stock held within that member state. So, if you're holding stock in Poland, you can then apply for a Polish Union One-Stop Shop, which will then allow you to sell from, say, Poland to a consumer that you may have in France or a consumer in the Netherlands, and you just file it under the singular VAT return. So it reduces the need to essentially have VAT in each market moving forward. With the one-stop shop as well, not only is it just the one kind of VAT return, it's one payment, so you pay it directly to the Polish tax offices or the tax offices in where you are registered for the one-stop shop, and they will then split that out to the owed countries. So it's very kind of easy for you. It's just that one payment management and one filing. It is, even though it is called the Union One-Stop Shop, obviously I would just like to highlight that it is available to all businesses who are holding stock within the EU. So it's eligible to be applied for a US-based business or a UK-based business, as long as you are holding stock within that member state that you are applying for that within. And it does only take around 1 to 2 weeks. With that, with the OSSs, it's once that registration has been approved, because typically that number of your Polish VAT is basically validated to enable you to sell intra-EU. So that takes an additional kind of couple of weeks, which is submitted once that VAT number has come approved. So getting your goods during that time frame, however, obviously you're able to get your goods landed in Poland, get that set up ready for fulfillment, and then by the time that's done, your OSS should land and you can then begin selling away. Some other kind of things to look at with Poland is it does have easy access to a few markets. So you've got easy access to Germany. Obviously, as we know, Germany is one of the big e-com markets within the EU. It's looking at a revenue of around 88.3 billion euros and about 44 million consumers. So that is obviously a great access point to that market. Again, you've got access to Lithuania, which is about 1.116 billion USD e-com market, and a high popular cross-border product is fashion. So there'll be a lot of, benefit there to any businesses who are looking at the fashion industry, especially if you're looking at marketplaces. There are quite a few marketplaces you can access within Poland as well. So you can look at kind of Allegro, Amazon, and also just generally your own website. Sweden, again, that's, a big market and it has ease of access. You're looking at an average monthly order value of 209 USD. Now, with the kind of average order value within Sweden, which is a really great point, with the Union OSS, there is no cap on order value as well. So you can really kind of sell any value of product, whether that be €50 or €500, that can all be filed under the OSS as long as it's there through to the direct consumer rather than B2B. And then also another one to highlight is just Czech Republic. Obviously, it's quite close to Poland. And again, it has similar kind of fashion focus with 1.84 billion in revenue, with an average spend in 2023 of 612 per online kind of consumer. And that was kind of the simply fact portion of today's slides, I'm going to hand you over to Sam, who's going to be focusing on ILG and fulfillment from Poland.
Thanks, Liam. So I'll jump straight in, and you've covered a few of these points already in terms of the opportunity, I suppose, in Poland, but also across the European Union. So just some stats here, really. Some of these probably already be aware of, but projections are showing that European Union e-commerce is set to hit about 1.1 trillion US dollars by just next year. There's 440 million consumers across the EU. They all have the same high expectations that that we have. They expect sustainable, seamless order fulfillment and a really positive customer experience. And we know firsthand just how important getting that customer experience right the first time is, how expensive, difficult it is to acquire new customers these days, and therefore how important it is getting that first order right. As I said, it's clear there's a huge opportunity, but there's also definitely quite a lot of nervousness in commerce around trading cross-border and cross-border compliance, and we've got some research I did in late 2024, and that showed that 82% of those businesses surveyed were concerned about cross-border compliance, and that was impacting their decision to sell into new markets. But I guess the underlying message is that there is clearly an opportunity. Those who are investing in the right technology, in the right partners, and the right fulfillment are scaling fast. If we just jump forwards. Brilliant. So why Poland? I know Liam touched on some of these points, but there's sort of no doubting that that Poland is a strategically advantageous location to fulfill from, particularly for those locations nearby, and particularly Germany, which is the EU's biggest market. That being said, it has strong links both by road into Germany, France, Benelux, and beyond. There's good rail freight connections from China, which is sometimes kind of a bit of a myth, and people don't always believe it, particularly compared to sea freight options into more traditional Western European destinations. But I think really, if I was to summarize, the biggest reason that we see brands kind of opting for Poland over, traditional locations such as Benelux, in Amsterdam, and in the traditional sort of warehousing locations, is that the competitiveness from a cost perspective is significant in Poland compared to those more traditional locations. There's excellent standards of facilities and really skilled and engaged workers. Just next one. I think just to underline as well, we touched on it earlier, but I think Poland sometimes has a reputation for being slightly remote and not being able to deliver quickly, which is not really true. And most markets can be served within 1 to 4 days on a road service, and much faster on an express service. And we know that those customers have similar delivery expectations to us in the UK. That sort of Amazon Prime mentality does exist in the European Union, as you would expect. But Poland is located in a way that is advantageous for delivering to these key markets, and that's something that is sometimes overlooked, combined with its attractiveness from a cost-based perspective. So I guess a little bit about ILG in addition to the opportunity in Poland. So just to give a slight overview of our organisation. So we've been in business since 1990, and we've therefore got over 30 years of experience in order fulfillment, warehousing, and distribution. We've become kind of known really for a specialism in fashion, beauty, well-being, but also in many other product categories as well. But they're kind of the 3 pillars that we focus on mostly. So in the ILG family, in the ILG group of companies, we've got the ILG business and also an organisation called GFS, Global Freight Solutions, which joined the group last February. So combined, we're about 170 million pounds of revenue, operating from 10 facilities across the UK and Poland, and shipping just in ILG, not in GFS, around 10 million orders, both in e-commerce and also delivery to retailers. In terms of the Poland opportunity, so we opened our mainland European DC in Poland, which is in Wrocław, just an hour and a half from the German border in the southwest of Poland. That opened in May 2021 as a response to Brexit, mainly for our existing customers at the time, which were fulfilling European Union orders from the UK to Poland, but has since grown, to be an established business in its own right, of around 20 million pounds turnover. And really, it was a natural extension for us to open up in Poland, or open up in Europe next, and was a sensible pillar for us to grow and to continue to scale the successful business here in the UK. I guess just to highlight the difference, there's lots of people providing, lots of companies providing fulfillment and warehousing services, and we kind of really strive to differentiate ourselves on being more than just boxes, having that experience of being a rapidly growing business ourselves, that experience in excellent customer experience, and I guess differentiating ourselves on that high touch, personalized, bespoke fulfillment solution. We're an organization that's really built on long-term partnerships, on longevity of clients, on sustainability, and we're not in the business of short-term relationships. Many of our customers have 5, 6, 7, even 10 years plus kind of ILG service, if you like, and longevity, and we're very focused on I guess looking after those brands that we work with by focusing on really like 4 key pillars, which are what we believe to be best in class facilities, a real investment in our people, and in particular in our sort of customer service function, being very available to the people that we work with. We have a large customer service team that are in the UK, but also a localized customer service team that are based from the European DC in Poland. And then our third kind of strategic pillar is that market leading technology. And then lastly, really, a real commitment to trying to kind of be the best business we can, to doing the best things by our people, by really trying to reduce our impact on the environment in an industry which hasn't got the best reputation for its contribution to sustainability. And then I guess kind of sitting underneath that is our global reach, and both ILG and GFS are wholly owned subsidiaries of Yusen Logistics, who you may have heard of. They are a very large Japanese heritage logistics company, which as a kind of worldwide group have a combined turnover of in excess of $20 million, 600 global bases, and 55,000 employees. So really nice business, which allows us to be able to tap into that local expertise in more than just the UK and Europe, but also having expertise on the ground through that parent company in almost every country. Next slide. Perfect. I think one important thing to underline in our service offering at ILG is that we see ourselves as providing a fully managed service offering for warehousing, fulfillment, pick, pack, and dispatch, to include final mile delivery. And many of our rivals will claim to be managing final mile delivery proactively and in a way that's differentiating them. There's very few that really are, and our investment in the GFS business means that we are, as a combined organization, shipping in excess of 30 million parcels a year across the globe. We have access to over 100,000 carrier services, a huge customer service team, and also access to other types of deliveries, things like out of home deliveries, drop off deliveries, which some of our rivals don't have access to, or if they do, it requires the brands to have varying integrations into those carriers, of which is something that we can take care through our one multi-carrier partner solution. So good, you got those slides 3 times. So I think, I guess just to cover it off again, Poland does sometimes get a reputation for being remote, and which is just simply not true. It really is well positioned for rapid delivery across all of the European Union core markets, and I guess lots of research. I touched on some of this earlier, but customers are used to that prime-like experience, particularly in markets like Germany and France that are more closely aligned to our cultures here in the UK, and that sort of 1 to 2 day delivery is expected, and it isn't necessarily a luxury. Studies show that sometimes slow or unpredictable delivery options really can cause abandoned baskets. Lots of research out there about kind of a lack of localization, putting people off, particularly when you're competing almost against yourself in the retailers. Perhaps they have got localization, you're selling through your own D2C, but also through a retailer. If there's the option to buy it through the retailer that's fulfilling locally, not through your own D2C website, which is, tends to be more profitable, you can almost lose business to yourself. So a real kind of advantage of that European Union, local fulfillment for the EU market. A big piece about returns and smoother returns, and I guess we know that in fashion beauty, particularly in fashion, returns can be 50% plus of all orders. That process has to be seamless, it has to be quick to the customer, but also has real implications to the brand in terms of getting stock back available on the shelf, reselling it, fiscal implications of duty and tax alongside that. So by kind of cutting out some of those customs complexities by moving stuff cross border, that can also be can be cut out. And then I guess lastly, we know that those kind of high value customers are expecting that experience. They're not expecting just a parcel, and we're very flexible when it comes to personalized inserts, when it comes to the handling of items that are fragile, are dangerous goods, and really kind of plays a focus on being as flexible and as agile as we can be in that area. I think just one last point is that we also are acutely aware that there's a real increasing awareness from customers, particularly Gen Z customers, around absolutely for all the right reasons, around a real focus on the environment, reducing our impact, and we are absolutely aligned with that. And the Poland warehouse is outstanding in terms of its environmental credentials, running on renewable energy. It's closer to the carrier networks than some of our rivals, which is resulting in greener fulfillment and delivery options, and is generally just trying to kind of do the best we can in that regard. I guess we've touched on this before in terms of the location. What Poland doesn't need to do is necessarily replace the existing UK or US warehousing model you might have. We really see that building the right mix, having a dual stock strategy with Poland fulfilling European Union orders, the UK fulfilling those orders to the UK, perhaps the rest of the world, and with the the increasingly challenging situation with the US, a US warehouse fulfilling those orders with replenishments either via air if coming from further away, or through road replenishments. We have a lot of customers that are treating the European Union warehouse as their central warehouse and trunking goods or air freighting goods to other local warehouses across the globe, and vice versa. And that approach really helps to cut some of those customs headaches for those EU orders. I guess what are the challenges? Why? Again, I've touched on some of these, but what would the challenges be you could encounter if you don't have a European Union or a Poland hub? I think that, the biggest two really are around that complexity, those possible delays, which things have got better for sure since 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 we first left the European Union, but it is still challenging, and we still see weekly, whole trucks of goods that will be stopped for a customs inspection. They will generally be released, but that might not be for 24, 48 hours. We see that regularly with goods. There's of course an additional duty and tax burden on those orders. A big point here, which is around particularly those customers that are manufacturing in the EU, bringing goods back to the UK and then sending them back to the EU and almost losing their origin status and being dutiable a second time. And I guess just to underline, one final time, there is some real statistics out there that when consumers see that goods are not being fulfilled locally, they can be put off, particularly when they are available on on the retailer's website, in addition to the brand's website. So I've just got just a couple of case studies on the next couple of slides, really, about our customers. This is one brand that we've worked with for a long time, Little Green Radicals, that are a children's wear company, and they moved forward with local fulfillment, and they saw some really quite impressive results in terms of e-commerce growth by doing that versus fulfilling from the UK. So combined across Germany and the US, 40% growth, and we've worked with them for many years now across those two territories. I guess in terms of, are you Poland ready? Then, in terms of things to nail now, the first is, of course, get a partner to be able to localize that stock with in Poland to move forward with. There's a lot of changes happening in the European sphere around packaging and reducing the amount of packaging being used on orders and actually the items themselves. So that needs a little bit of research. Think through how stock can be managed across more than one location. That does have some complexities, but it is a well-trodden path for many brands. Make sure that that there's plenty of planning done for those peak periods, and of course work with experienced partners that have experience in those markets, and genuinely, Poland isn't just a warehouse location. We do see that it's a real strategic gateway to that European growth. And then I guess I touched on it earlier, but as I said, we're working with a real myriad of brands across lots of different industries, predominantly in sort of fashion, beauty, and well-being, but have a number of customers in other areas. And I guess just got a few examples here of brands, many of which have been ILG customers for many years.
Perfect. Well, thank you for going through that, Sam. It was really interesting to learn a bit more about kind of ILG and about the kind of support that you provide customers. So we're just going to go through a few questions. Again, just to the audience, obviously, if you have any questions, please do feel free to pop them in the comment section. In the background, however, we have been able to generate a few questions from both clients and the team on our side. So I think the first one, which leads quite nicely from what you were just kind of saying, is why, from your point of view in fulfillment, is Poland becoming such a key location to kind of, fulfillment and looking at that piece with getting into that EU market?
Yeah, so I think, Liam, because it's is the fastest growing economy in Europe itself, in Poland, there's a real sort of shift in the development of that country. But the main reason, there's two really, is its location to those major e-commerce markets, particularly Germany, of which our site is an hour and a half just from that border, so you can be delivering next day on a standard delivery service. But the second is still being that significant cost competitiveness, particularly compared to those traditional Western European locations. Social security payments still tend to be much lower in Poland than they are in places like France and Benelux locations. So I think that combination of optimum location to deliver, but also cost, is why we're seeing such demand for services in that market.
Yeah, I would say I agree. And just, I guess, following nicely off the back of that, I know you highlighted kind of the reduction of delivery times, but how are you specifically able to offer and accommodate those delivery kind of timelines? Because we've all had discussions with kind of clients selling cross-border, and one of those things that we tend to see when their goods are, say, in the UK, is that frustration around it's getting held at customs, etc. So how does that, help reduce it when it's in Poland?
Yeah, of course. I think, the key thing is that complexity is just removed. The goods, when fulfilled locally, are in free circulation. They have already cleared customs, and they can be distributed across any one of the, the 27 EU countries without the need for any customs checks. So by just eradicating that need for the customs checks, you kind of by default take out some of that risk with stuff getting stuck in customs, which, as I said, like they tend to get released, but there is that delay, and that's hard to manage for the customer. So I guess kind of by design, that reduces the possibility of such situations happening.
And do you usually see that as like a key, I guess, selling point to the Polish fulfillment warehouse? Is that, with clients that you may have in your UK warehouses, that does help reduce that kind of, barrier between themselves?
Yeah, definitely. I think, the combination of the end consumer's perception around the risk of purchasing and stuff getting delayed, the risk of am I going to get charged more? Is there an unknown? Even if shipping on a duty paid basis from the UK, as an example, there's still some clear correlation between abandonment and on that basis. That combined with the cost synergy of moving goods, because moving goods cross border is that can be costly. There's customs declarations to be made that comes with a cost on a per transaction basis, whereas when goods are in free circulation and you're moving them a couple of hours by road, there is also a significant cost advantage as well as that delivery promise advantage.
Perfect, thank you. We also do actually have a question from a viewer. So they have asked, they are based in the EU, they're located in Finland. Do you see kind of Nordic e-commerce companies opening up locations in, say, Poland, or have you seen, anything like that can help reduce those shipping times, or anything else?
Yeah, definitely. I can't think of an example right now, but there is definitely a strategic move to deliver quicker, not to necessarily get around the advantages of the complexity of which Finland is there's no hard border to navigate, but definitely still advantages of fulfilling close those main markets. Significant cost benefit as well in a place like Poland versus Finland from a warehousing cost, but also a delivery cost perspective. So absolutely value in exploring that for sure. And we'd love to talk about that with that brand even in more detail as well. So
yeah, I would say I agree with what you've just said as well. And even from a VAT perspective, obviously looking at the flip side, as they're based already in the EU, they've already got that OSS. So all they need then is just that Polish VAT, and then they're good to go. But yeah, I think that's a good one. And it leads me nicely onto another question is, what typically are the most common logistical challenges that you do see, and how does ILG really help sellers overcome these challenges and get them in that market?
I think kind of some of the concerns can be around getting the goods in, for the first time to stock the warehouse. So that first sort of transfer of bringing stock into an EU warehouse, having been used to customs procedures in the UK or the US. So I guess us being part of a larger group and having access to those custom services, in a different way to the services of simply that, but being able to actually, to get to make the entries, to handhold those first shipments through, is definitely an area that I'm not even sure it's necessarily a huge challenge, but it definitely causes quite a lot of anxiety for brands. So we're often handling all of that import clearance, even if we're not handling the transportation itself. Our customs in-house customs team through use in Poland can support with that. They can navigate some of those challenges. They can help with supporting in translating of invoices and any things like that. So I think probably that's one of the biggest challenges that I've seen from my experience.
Yeah, I think, that's always key. I think it's always the first shipment that people tend to get quite nervous about, especially, or what I've typically seen. I don't know if you've seen it previously with kind of UK brands that you've worked with, but obviously we've highlighted a couple of times Brexit, when that happened, I think there's a lot of like anxiety going back into the EU market because obviously it's slightly different. But I think once you've navigated that one sale or that one shipment across, it really helps reduce those, and you steadily see that growth kind of come back to where it once was within kind of
exactly, Liam. Yeah, exactly.
And on that kind of note about getting back into markets and kind of boosting busy periods, I've got a couple of questions and they're quite similar. So, I mean, one of them would just be looking at how or what advice would you give sellers preparing for kind of Black Friday holiday period in terms of the fulfillment strategy? And then similarly, following on to that, how does ILG actually help, prepare or have that surge in demand? Are the team prepared for it? What do you do every year that really helps build?
Yeah, of course. So I think,
those sales?
that Q4 trading period is probably the most important to almost all the brands we're working with, and of course ourselves. So our planning for peak starts almost as soon as the previous peak has finished in terms of planning for the next Black Friday. So we're already kind of months of planning underway. But I think the biggest sort of lesson that I can share with brands is communication, and over communicating, whether that be with your end customer, with your 3PL in terms of your lead time, so that there's no room for misalignment. Often what I've seen when things have been challenging is that when there hasn't been that level of communication, things get misunderstood. So that is probably the biggest thing I'd say is communicate, and have lots of touch points to ensure that things are on track, that everyone knows what they're meant to be doing when they're meant to be doing it, so that there's no room for any misalignment.
Perfect. And on that as well, just with kind of brands, obviously we've spoken a lot about different warehouses. So you've got it in UK, you've got one in Poland. I'm sure you'll be growing further very, very quickly. But when we're looking at kind of brands going between those two markets, how do they typically balance stock, / how do you help them balance their stock between the UK and EU when you're looking at that growth?
Yeah, I guess it comes down really to trying to forecast where that stock's going to be needed and where that demand's coming from. So we will help brands to look at historical data that we have of what's selling where. Of course, they will have their own demand plans, and I think whilst all the planning in the world can happen, it is a reality that sometimes the stock can be in the wrong warehouse. You need it in the European warehouses in the UK and vice versa, but also being able to just react to that and be aware of that. Poland is not a million miles away, so should that happen, we can still move goods, and we can still have regular shipments moving between the UK and the Poland warehouse, should there be an out of stock situation. But I guess the key thing is in that planning, in trying to forecast demand, but also just being relaxed should that not happen, and reacting to that, and moving kind of in a reactive, not necessarily proactive way.
Perfect. Thank you. And I've just got two kind of last final questions from the team over at Simply VAT. And then again, if anyone has any questions, please do pop them in now. If we don't get around to them now, we will get around to them after today's kind of session. But I'm going to kind of tie the last two together, because I think when we're looking at the growth, so we've spoken a lot about Poland strategy, etc. So one, what do you think makes Poland a strategic launchpad for reaching those close markets like Germany, Czech Republic, Slovakia? And can you share, or can you think of a success story of a brand that have benefited, especially within those markets, but from relocating the stock into Poland to reach those markets, or anything like that?
Yeah, of course. So I think on the first question, we've kind of covered a lot of those points. That the biggest is probably still coming back to that, the proximity to those markets, and the advantage to the lead time, but also the cost advantage of that fulfillment versus the UK. In terms of a success story, we've worked with a beauty brand, Morphe Cosmetics, for several years. We initially worked with them just for wholesale fulfillment to their retailers to do glass in Europe from Poland, and and wholesale fulfillment from the UK. We last year worked with them to transition their e-commerce business that had previously been fulfilled from the UK to all locations across the globe into two warehouses, one in the UK to fulfill the UK and rest of the world, one for European Union. And the results they've seen in improved conversion, particularly in Germany, has literally been double digit in terms of increase to order volume that's been dispatched. Of course, that's not all down to the location, but it's clear that with the right focus on, I guess, every part of the journey, by having that right strategy, of which we really do believe that the optimum fulfillment location is an important factor, they've been able to really unlock significant growth in that area, which was really kind of being stunted up until that point. So that's one of many, but one that always springs to mind for me, that was literally kind of an overnight. Once the stock was available, once we were moving, the organic growth just happened almost immediately.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I feel like that's always a common thing as well. So, I mean, just speaking about it from a perspective of, looking at growing businesses in different markets as well. So, one thing about Germany is obviously we know it's a very key market, but the time frame for VAT registration approval does take around 8 to 12 weeks within Germany. So, it's quite lengthy. It takes a while, whereas you can easily access that market through Poland, holding stock there and still look at growing, marketing, advertising. So it will really help grow those sales. But yeah, I think going from there, again, thank you, Sam, for your time today. It's been great. And it's been great to learn more about ILG and how you kind of help support. We do just have some key resources that we'd like to highlight to everyone that are available. So we've actually worked with ILG previously on a fact sheet, which is available for download and will be circulated post-webinar, as well as a VAT Essentials Guide in Poland. And yeah, again, thank you everyone for your time. If you have any questions, please do feel free to reach out to either myself or Sam, and then we'll be able to kind of support you from there. But yeah, thank you all. And thank you again, Sam, for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Liam. Thanks, everyone.
Perfect. Thank you.